Welcome back. Now, South Africa still finds itself as one of the most unequal societies in the world, with most citizens living in poverty, while a small segment of the population controls the majority of the wealth. The Democratic Alliance, which is the official opposition to the ruling ANC, mirrors that reality for most South Africans. This as municipalities in the DA-ruled Western Cape showcase this inequality in the most drastic of ways. Considering the country's history, could the DA lead SA in our lifetime? Join me now to analyze the DA's relevance in modern-day South Africa is governance expert Sam Koma and a professor of political sciences at UNISA, Dirk Kotze. Thank you so much for your time, gents. The DA has been the official opposition party for 23, 24 years now. Starting with you, Dirk, I mean, has it created a runway that is long enough for itself to eke out significant power and support in these next elections?
Well, I think the DA is at the moment at a point where they've not necessarily reached the ceiling, but they are not growing exponentially. And I think this is one of their key concerns, is that they are sort of in the around about 20% now for quite some time. They are not losing significantly, but they are also not growing significantly. And what we have seen over time is that they've lost some support, especially in the Western Cape, amongst the so-called coloured votes. But that vote hasn't moved to a particular other party. It has actually become very fragmented into small parties, mainly located in the Western Cape and Northern Cape and a few other places. So I think that the DA is therefore looking now at partners, and that is where this multi-party charter or the moonshot pack is coming from, because they realized that on their own they won't be able to achieve much at a very critical time when the ANC might lose its majority.
Quite an interesting one, and I actually do want to come back to that multi-charter party there with you, Dirk. But coming to you, Sam, I mean, just the strength of the DA going into this election, considering also the breakaway parties that have come from there with, you know, from former leaders like Mmusi Maimane and Herman Mashaba.
Yes, in fact, Prof is also quite correct. The DA, since its inception, registered exponential electoral growth. It was only in 2019 that for the first time it registered electoral decline. And you remember there was a commission that was set up by the party, led by Mr. Tony Leon, to examine what could have been the contributing factors that led to this performance. And it's common cause what happened after the conclusion of that exercise. We know that the commission arrived at a conclusion that the leader, then Mr. Maimane, was an experiment gone wrong. And of course, he then subsequently left the party to form his own party, of course, through working with other like-minded individuals. So you're right. This time around, the DA is entering the 2024 national elections with a stiff competition flowing from so-called splinter parties or breakaway parties that are led by leaders who were part of the DA. So you have the Build One South Africa, led by Mr. Mmusi Maimane. You also have Shiluba Party, led by Bongani Baloyi, the former Midvaal mayor, which was, I mean, a municipality which even today is still within the control of the DA. Some went to Rise Mzansi. You also have Action SA, led by Mr. Herman Mashaba. So if history is anything to go by, we know that splinter parties tend to tap into the support base of the parties that they were party to initially. It is happening also with the governing party, with the formation of a number of such breakaway parties.
Yeah.
So that will have a serious impact on their electoral fortunes.
Yeah. I mean, just, you know, as we're talking about the kind of shifts that we have seen in the DA, but also just coming to you, Dirk, there's a common narrative that the DA hasn't actually done anything to prove that it can fix and turn things around for the majority of SA, and that all it's ever done is criticize the ANC. Has it missed an opportunity all these years?
Partly yes and partly no. I think what the DA has done is that they have not established themselves as a national party, but rather a party concentrated in a number of provinces. First, the Western Cape, now Gauteng. Gauteng actually overtook the Western Cape in terms of the number of votes given to the DA. They wanted, and it still appears to be the case, they want to extend it now to the KwaZulu-Natal also, and to some of the other areas like the Northern Cape. But the Northern Cape, in terms of from an electoral point of view, is actually a very small province. So the main, I would say, one of the key objectives of the DA is to become a real national party with a national footprint and not concentrated in a number of provinces. That's the key problem of all opposition parties, including the EFF. The EFF's by far majority of their votes are all in Gauteng. So it is something which is a common thread across most of the opposition parties. The other point, which I think, which is a very difficult matter to deal with for the DA, is its identity with respect to the composition of its members and supporters. And I think what we are seeing is that there becomes a bit of a disconnect between the leadership of the DA and the supporters and membership of the DA. I attended the launch of the manifesto, election manifesto at the union buildings. 95% or more of those were black persons. So that is not what the national debate is about. The national debate is that it is a liberal party and it's a predominantly white party. So the DA has a serious problem of how to explain itself to the general public in South Africa as a party which has become much more diverse. And I would say parties like the DA and the EFF and others are quite successful in presenting the DA like this, and they just don't manage to counter that. So I think that is one of the real predicaments for the DA going into this election also.
Yeah. So would you say, Sam, that maybe what the DA presents itself as right now, that it does not speak to the majority of South Africa?
Oh yeah, that's the reality that has faced the DA. We know that a sizable number of black leaders have since left the DA, and mostly they advance the reason around lack of transformation within its ranks, and also not appreciating the whole notion of diversity, not only in terms of membership, as Prof. alluded to, but also in its leadership ranks. Are they accommodative in that regard? So this is the work that they still have to focus on as part of renewing the party, but also ensuring that what they provide for as their values, their principles, also in reality speaks to that around diversity, their intention to build one South Africa that is open to all people from all walks of life, with a view to give them space to unlock their potential and also to express themselves.
Yeah, well, let's go into the mechanics of the multi-charter party for South Africa and obviously the manifesto. Just starting off with the multi-charter party, Dirk, where the DA is the anchor party. How will the mechanics of the votes feed into the possibility of the formation of this multi-party government?
Well, I think what is important is to understand that they won't stand as a coalition or as an alliance in the elections. They are going to stand as individual parties.
Yeah.
So the DA will have its own set of candidates, the Action SA will have their own set of candidates, the IFP will have their own set of candidates, and so on. The idea of the multi-party charter, as I understand it, is actually to in advance to negotiate a type of a common understanding of, if they reach the position where they can form a coalition, then they've done a lot of the preparatory work already. But we all know that elections sometimes can produce big surprises. And it might be that this formation is most certainly on their own, won't be able to mobilize a majority. 50% plus one or more of that. So they will have to, if the ANC receives a very low number of votes, let's say in the high 30s or low 40s. Only then will the multi-party charter becomes, in my mind, will become really one of the options for a coalition government. Otherwise, they won't have sufficient support, sufficient votes on their own to form a coalition government. So it means then that they will have to look either to the ANC or to other political parties. And other political parties obviously include the EFF, but I would say both the ANC as well as the multi-party charter will regard the EFF as their last option and not one of their first options.
All right. In the manifesto, John Steenhuisen said that the DA has already demonstrated that where they govern in places like the Western Cape, they have the ability to turn their pledges into concrete actions that deliver for all. I want to zoom into that, actions that deliver for all. I bet you the people whose houses are not on Airbnb posters would disagree with this. Has DA governance not benefited some and not others, and is delivering for all a hard sell on a national level, Sam?
Yes, not in terms of development indicators, but in terms of governance indicators, the track record is solid. They're quite correct. And the evidence flows from the AG reports. If you look at the PFMA audit outcomes, the Western Cape is topping in terms of delivering clean audits at the provincial level. You look at the MFMA audit outcomes, the same. Most of their municipalities located in the Western Cape are doing very well in delivering on the clean audits. But development indicators has the DA-led provincial government stemmed the issue of poverty that is afflicting majority of residents in that part of the world? The answer is no. Unemployment indicators, the same. So this is where they're struggling, but we cannot attribute this to the party or the government under the DA failing to fulfill these obligations. We know that the setup of our government, most of these competencies lie at the national level. It's only a few that are allocated to the provinces, but the provinces, for them to deliver on majority of these obligations, they still need the role and the involvement of the national government within the context of intergovernmental relations. So that's the area that needs to be factored in as part of holistically looking at the performance of the DA run provincial government in tandem with their municipalities.
Yeah, quite interesting there to see the differences between the governance and the development indicators. Dirk, I want to come to you in terms of the DA's proposal for a solution to youth employment. So they say that they would come up with the Youth Employment Opportunity Certificate, which would involve the scrapping of the minimum wage. Is this a bitter pill that could do more harm than good, or necessary for long-term gain?
Well, I think from my side, it's very difficult to determine what will be the impact of something like that. The youth unemployment is possibly one of our biggest issues, and it is something which no party so far could actually deal with effectively, because our economy is, first of all, as my colleague is saying, is very much centralized. The decision-making in the South African economy is very much coming from the Reserve Bank and from the Department of Trade and Industry and the Treasury and other departments. And it is filtered down to the other two spheres of government, provincial and local. I think one of the key, for me as someone at the university, the key element which is not factored into sufficiently by all the parties is the question of education and training. Because you can have all sorts of quick fix ways of trying to create employment, but if you are not having the basis, the foundation for it, it will only remain a quick fix and it will not able to last very long. So I would, instead of trying to create jobs but that's not lasting, focus much more on the quality of education and at the same time to diversify our qualification. We tend to push all our students through an academic curriculum at school level as well as at university level. And universities are the main options. All the colleges that are supposed to be there, the technical institutions that are supposed to be there, don't exist at the moment. And until we have that diversification, we can try as hard as possible in order to deal with youth unemployment. We won't succeed. So for me, that is the key. And it's a long-term investment. It's not something which will change in the first 5 years afterwards.
Yeah. Just lastly, as we wrap up the conversation, we have run out of time, but Sam, I do need to ask you this question. I mean, South Africa has a unique history where it's become necessary to right the wrongs of the past, and obviously being intentional in opening up opportunities for the previously disadvantaged, hence why we have black economic empowerment and racial quotas. And of course, the implementation of those has not been perfect, where some people have used that for their own personal gain. But the DA, are they not scoring an own goal by saying that they would propose to remove these targets that are targeted at the majority of the population?
Yes, hence the DA is unable to attract a sizable voter base from the black segment of the population. So it will continue, of course, to do well in terms of reaching out to its core constituency. White, colored, of course, also some black voters, but not in terms of attracting a bigger chunk of the black population to be able to grow exponentially and also at some point become a force to be reckoned with at the national level, meaning becoming a national government. So those are some of the policies that they need to seriously revisit and also look at how best to refine these kind of policies, but also ensure that they are able to consistently indicate that, yes, for diversity, but we also appreciate the historical legacy, the injustice, and also the disadvantages that were meted out against the majority of black people.
Indeed, the fire is rising ahead of these elections. Thank you so much for your time and for your analysis today, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. That was political sciences lecturer at UNISA, Dirk Kotze, and governance expert, Sam Koma.